Hello, listeners. This is F. Molina, and I got with me the legendary attorney and legendary meteor and part-time municipal court judge, Charlie Ochoa. How you doing, Charlie?
Doing great.
Man, Charlie, thank you so much for setting up this interview for us, because we have with us today a dean of a law school, but not just any law school. This is the Oklahoma School of Law. We are joined by Katheleen Guzman from the University of Oklahoma College of Law. Thank you for joining us, Katheleen.
I can't say how excited I am to be here and how privileged I feel to be able to talk about some of these things with you, Ef'n, and also with Judge Ochoa.
Well, the first thing that I have to get into is when I was talking to Charlie, I was kind of surprised because of who you are as a dean. Number one, you are Hispanic. And number two, you are a woman. And in terms of law school deans, when I went to law school, there were not very many women deans, and they were not very many Hispanic deans. So congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. I feel really privileged to have the role that I have. It's a big job, and I'm not a quote big person. I am simply the same old me I've always been, but that is someone who has grown up around legal education and who finds such passion within it. So that makes it all the more fun to go to work every day and to do what I'm able to do.
Can you tell us, how did you get into this position as a dean of a law school?
Well, I'll be frank. When I was in law school, I found myself really loving teaching, and I just had these few opportunities. I attended school at a different school than where I now teach, and I was in this class that really turned everything like this on for me. And the purpose of the class was manyfold, but one component was come up with a topic that you feel really energized about, develop what your lesson plan would be, teach that topic for a whole week to the class. And that's when I got the teaching bug. It made me feel so, I don't know, it satisfied something in my soul, I guess, to be able to learn something well enough that I could share that which I had learned with other people. So I got into the teaching profession pretty early. My dad was a law professor, Rafael Guzman, at the University of Arkansas College of Law, and he loved his job, and he encouraged me to keep going after it. So I tried, and I'll be candid on this too. It took me a while to get a teaching job. I went through the hiring process about 3 times, but the third time was the charm, and then luck and a little bit of serendipity conspired. I ended up here in Norman, Oklahoma, at the University of Oklahoma College of Law in 1993. So I've been here for 30 years teaching, and just find every day both a challenge and an opportunity. And I became interim dean about 4 years ago, and then was named to the position on a permanent perspective. Well, not forever, for heaven's sakes, but I was named to the permanent deanship in June of 2021. So here I stay, and happy as a clam to be here.
Well, I can tell you that I followed the search as it was ongoing, and it seemed to go on forever, because I'd call every 3 or 4 months, and I'd say, well, have they named a permanent dean? And no, they haven't done it yet. But I was so happy to see her being appointed.
And then I had a lunch with Charlie, and he was like, why didn't you consider, when you were applying to law school, why didn't you consider applying to Oklahoma? And I was like, why didn't I consider applying? And then Charlie told me about his experience there, and it was wonderful. So can you tell us, what type of challenges do you see the current law school students there at Oklahoma facing, and how does the law school there approach those challenges?
Well, I think that so many challenges surfaced and accelerated both during COVID. And I know that's a 2-letter a two-syllable word rather that it's sometimes difficult to say. It feels like it's been this national and international, of course, crisis because it has. But one of the things that I think it really brought to light here at the College of Law and elsewhere is this recognition that things can change really rapidly. And one of the skills that I think we owe ourselves and we owe our community partners and we owe our students here at the College of Law to kind of help them navigate is this willingness to recognize and be flexible and adept and agile and respond to changing circumstances. Because I think we live in a world that is changing in some ways in revolutionary fashion rather than evolutionary fashion. And I think that the practice of law and legal education are two arenas that illustrate that well. So technology, that's a second component that's here to stay. And I think online education in different forms and fashions is also here to stay. And so if we can help our students recognize the role that law plays in the world, recognize the need to be able to respond with alacrity to some of these situations as they change, and with the comfort level around the knowledge that they too can do it. I think we're doing a great service to and for and with our students, and to and for and with the community in which we all live and serve and work.
And I see that you got your LLM from Yale Law School. The other thing, you were dean during the COVID crisis, right?
I was.
So I think you should unofficially also get a certificate in crisis management.
Oh my. I'm not giving myself any such certificates unless we all get certificates for coming out the other side of that. But it was certainly an interesting and challenging time.
Can you tell us a little bit how you approach that from a leadership standpoint?
Well, sometimes with mistakes, and I'll be the first to admit that. I think so much of it was kind of figuring out and confronting reactions to things as they were arising. We all went home on Friday the 13th in 2020, and it was uh, well, I guess that was a portentous date, right? Because we did not come back after Friday the 13th. At least we did not come back in person. But I have to hand it to our faculty and our staff and our students and our alums. I mean, literally, I think that people just joined forces together and thought, what do we need to do here to respond to this? And our faculty went online within, I'll say, about 3 weeks. We very quickly discerned that the COVID the crisis might last longer than at first we were all anticipating. So we got space across campus that could accommodate safely 700 people. We were quick to rent different spaces. We were quick to expand. We were quick to ensure that our building was kind of outfitted with all the latest and maybe the greatest, I don't know, but safety features that we could, whether it was HEPA air filters or filters in every classroom, sometimes two. We ensured that we had wireless capacity, not only within our building, of course, but all the way around it, so that if students, for example, needed to, they could come up to our parking lots and access class once we did go online from the iPads that every single one of our students already had, because that's something that we provided to them in orientation, their first year of law school.
So if
Yeah.
you attend your law school, you get a free. Do they still call them laptops, or are they surfaces? What are they called, Charlie? Now,
I don't know.
Well, I guess it depends upon what we're talking about, but in this instance, they were iPads, large iPads, and every student gets one, and it's part of our digital initiative because we think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that our students feel comfortable, even if they don't feel technologically savvy or sophisticated, they at least feel comfortable with technology. And we try to integrate that through our digital initiative and our Center for Legal Technology and Innovation and Law Practice and Education. We feel really lucky that we're one of only, I believe it's two law schools in the multiverse to have been named an Apple Distinguished School for the way that we try to integrate technology into the classroom in appreciable and not just superficial ways.
Oh, and besides the University of
Mhm.
Oklahoma having an awesome dean, it sounds like, how else does the law school separate itself from other law schools?
Well, all right. I've got three sons, and one is 26, one is 24, soon to be 25, the third is 21. And all of them are kind of continuing to think about, wonder about, worry about, question what they want to do and whether they want to go on to extend their education in different ways. And I always tell them when they're thinking about this, I said, you have to look at the fundamentals. And for me, and I can be a bossy mother, I admit that sometimes I can boss my children around with regularity. But for me, the fundamentals really boil down to one word for law school, and that's value. And the value proposition, I believe, is intense at the OU College of Law. And I think of it as coming at us in two different ways. I think about value as being this confluence of affordability and excellence. And we can look to all types of extrinsic metrics to kind of determine whether we are affordable, whether we offer excellence to our students and our community. And I'll give you just a few, and a few that are kind of more data oriented, perhaps. And then I want to talk about, if you'll permit me, a few more that are uh, maybe less obvious. The obvious things first. We currently have the lowest residential tuition in the Big 12 and the second lowest tuition in and total cost of attendance for non-residents in the Big 12. So we have a low debt load for our students at graduation. We spend a very good sized amount on our students in terms of waivers and scholarships because we want to support them and their choices without having them feel burdened by a lot of debt. We Our students graduate with roughly half of the debt that's average for law students to graduate, or with which law students graduate across the country.
Wow.
So all of that's just kind of numbers stuff, but I don't think that's enough unless we marry that with excellence. And our bar passage rate is typically one of the top, you know, 20 to 25 in the country. Our employment numbers are amazing. And so when I think of fundamentals and I talk with my sons about how they might assess where they might go to school for graduate education, I'm thinking about that. We want to our students to come here. We want them to learn. We want them to become part of the community. We want them to graduate. We want them to pass the bar. We want them to find personally and professionally fulfilling employment. And on all those metrics, kind of assessed from external sources, we are doing that in spades. We were recently named January or so of 2023, one of the top 25 best value law schools in the country. And so I'm just really proud of that. Um, and for lots of different reasons, I think when you've got a great value, you've got to have both that affordability and that excellence, because one without the other is not going to be enough. But I think we have both. And will you indulge me
Sure, go ahead.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
and let me talk a
Go
little
ahead.
bit about
Yes.
the heart part? So I think the other thing that sets us apart at OU Law is the heart element, not just the head, not just the data, not just the statistics, not just the numbers, but the way that our community comes together. Quick example: we had an auction. Guess it was about 2 months ago now, where one of our student organizations, Organization for the Advancement of Women in Law, put on an auction to support a local women's resource center, and it was packed. I mean, there were so many people there. There were students and some alums and faculty and staff in community, and there was a live auction component. I just got back not too long ago. I guess it was about a week and a half ago from one of the things that I put up with a colleague. We scary movie night with home cooked meals, and we laughed with a group of students and just had a great time for I don't know, 7 till 12, 5 hours. And that's just one example. Our faculty members invest in our students' lives. Our staff does too, and our students invest in each other. So those two things together, head and heart married, reminds me of that REO Speedwagon song, and you probably don't know it, but should I follow my head or follow my heart? And I think at OU College of Law, you got both. And if you can get both in one fell swoop, we're in Fat City.
Well, Dean, I'm going to ask you a question that we've had some discussion about in the past.
Uh-huh.
So it's my softball question to you, and that is, does the law school recruit many Texas students, and in particular students from South Texas?
We try, but we want to do even more. I can say that we recruit in Texas, we recruit in South Texas, we recruit all over the country, but obviously we have a really strong regional presence, more than a national presence. I think we're an unsung song. Many people don't know about OU, and I wish they did, but we can always do more. And I am committed to doing that more. Judge, you've been so thoughtful to invite me down to South Texas. We've tried a couple times to get that figured out, and I cannot wait to be there because it's critical to me. Um, it's one of my passions and one of my heartfelt desires to encourage people, to get people to see how they can succeed in law school. And part of that means just getting out into different communities in different ways and trying to convince people from Texas and South Texas to come on up to Oklahoma, where we've got a great program and we're not scary, and would be blessed by that.
Our first generation Hispanic students, an admission to law school is not life changing, it's generational changing.
No, I agree with you. I can see that even in my own family. My grandfather came to the United States from Guatemala, and he was going to attend a college. It turned out that he became a pastry chef, loved it, and was made the best Linzer tort I've ever had. But he ended up not finishing his college degree. My father then did, and was a first generation member of our family on my paternal side, at least if we don't go back farther than that in Guatemala to go to college and then to continue on to law school. And I just know that the changes that I believe, I mean, I was pretty young then, but I believe that it made for my life because I looked at things from a different perspective, and from a perspective of the opportunity that education yields in a way that I might well not have had I not had that experience, and my father had not had that experience. So he did go to law school, and I didn't know what I wanted to do for the longest time when I was in college. And when I graduated, and I finally, I was waitressing somewhere, meeting people, loving what I was doing. Um, I don't denigrate that at all, but I realized I wasn't really using my degree. And I called my dad one evening after a really late night, being on the wait staff, and he said, and I said, Dad, I'm thinking about going to law school. And he said, I've been waiting for you to say that forever. And I said, well, why? And every time he would ask me before, like, why don't you consider law school? Have you ever considered law school? I'd say, oh, what can I do with a law degree? And he said, the whole time you'd been asking the wrong question. It's not what can you do with a law degree, but what can't you do better with one? And so I had that encouragement and that opportunity, and that completely reframed my perspective about so much. And I'd love to bring that to broader areas of our country. I'd love, boy, we can get more Texans up here. We like to say sometimes that our bar passage rate in Texas is the highest in Texas because some of our Texas students come up here and then they want to go back to Texas, which is great. And they go down there and they pass the bar, and we're happy for them. So we need more. We need more.
Well, Dean, let me ask you this question, and I think it's one of the requirements for admission that I think has been a hindrance for minority students, Hispanics, and probably African Americans in particular. But why is the LSAT such an important factor in law school admission?
Well, first is maybe to answer a question that you did not ask. So I apologize for that because but I'm going to start in this way. It will be interesting to see where LSATs take us, where they lead. I know that there are discussions across the country about the LSAT, in a way that, or in a similar way to discussions that have been held around the ACT or the undergrad test, the SAT, any kind of standardized tests like that. I think that historically at the College of Law here and at other law schools, the thinking has been we want to ensure that people that when they're spending this much money, again, we have a great value here at OU Law, but that's going to differ depending where one goes. But when that much money is being invested, we want to make sure that the person investing that time, that energy, that effort, that resource, that money, all of it is going to be in a position to be able to graduate and pass the bar. And uh, it's a terrible position to be in if you take the bar after 3 years of law school, and it's not a terrible position. I overstate that, but it's a suboptimal position when you graduate and take the bar, and then there's some difficulty passing the bar. Now, many people take it more than once, many people take it more than twice or three times or four. And it's not that the LSAT determines with us or for us, much less who's going to succeed. But it's been used as a proxy, perhaps, where it can illuminate someone's ability to come in right off the bat and dedicate the time and attention and grit and resilience that's needed to graduate from law school. Because I do think that that's a big undertaking, and we want to ensure that we support those students who join us in all of those efforts.
What type of extracurricular stuff does a law school like Oklahoma look for from students?
I think a leadership and engagement are two important components. I think that when a file reveals and reflects that a person has been willing to engage with the educational enterprise in ways that transcend going to class, studying for the final, taking finals and graduating, but rather is a participant in that educational undertaking, that can make a really big difference, especially when that participation leads to the type of roles that signify or that reveal that the person is a leader. I think leadership is not innate necessarily. For some people it probably is, but I do think it's a skill that can be learned. And when that reflects up from an application file, so that you see that someone is really a partner in the effort rather than a passive recipient of an education, that I know that stands out a lot to me. I can't speak for everyone, but I know it certainly stands out to me.
When someone's considering applying for for law school, there
Mm-hmm.
is a general idea amongst Texas students that in order to pass the Texas bar and be fluent with the Texas bar, you have to go to a Texas law school. And what Charlie kind of explained to me is that that's not the case like anymore, because there's a standardized
Yeah.
bar questions, right? Can you explain that?
Sure. Yes, I can. Um, I I think it's a salutary development in the bar examination. Oklahoma adopted what is called the uniform bar exam in 2021, was the first time it was administered in Oklahoma. It allows graduates who then take the bar to uh, secure a score and then port that score to other states. Texas is also a UBE state. Most states are. And so it's made it much easier, much more easy than it was in the past. When, as you noted, someone who's going to school somewhere else might think, oh, I have to go to school in, let's say, Colorado or Texas or Arkansas or Kansas or Connecticut, wherever, because I need to know that state's law. And that has changed so much over the past few years. Many jurisdictions had already adopted the uniform bar examination called the UBE, but many more have even over the past three or four. So untrue that you have to go to school in the state where you hope to live and practice to be licensed to practice in that state. The questions are not state specific in the way that they were when I graduated from law school, and perhaps when both of you did.
Yeah, Charlie's way way younger than me, so it's probably.
I don't know about that.
I took my test on paper, so.
Yeah, well, hey, I graduated from law school in 90. I got my JD in 1991, and I didn't know where I was going to practice or live. I didn't know whether my then significant other was going to end up being kind of my part of my permanent home. And so I ended up taking 3 bar exams in the first year and a half after graduating from law school because I thought I need to take the Arkansas and I need to take the Pennsylvania and I need to take the Tennessee. I wouldn't have to do that anymore with the uniform bar examination. So I think it's a big blessed positive change for law school grads.
Yes, I can. But let me ask you something, Efrain. We talked about this earlier.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think Dean Guzman would be received in the Rio Grande Valley at the university that you graduated from? What kind of effect would her visit have?
I think it would have a very big effect because most people at UTRGV and down here, I don't think they would to see a Hispanic dean from a law school, I think is one of the best feelings. I remember when I was growing up watching TV and there was a wrestler named Tito Santana. I'm like, whoa, there is a Hispanic wrestler on TV. And you're like, wow, you feel like you're more, that things are more inclusive now. And I think by you coming down here and just you being in the position you're in, I think that gives a message to other students that the practice of law, going to law school, it's become more diverse and inclusive. As in the past, it was more aristocratic, I guess.
You know, I would be honored. I'd feel privileged too. I think back to my little community, even where I went to high school. Very, very, um, well, it wasn't super small, but about 15 miles outside of Philadelphia, and very diverse across all kinds of aspects, socioeconomically challenging in many ways. Blue collar town, I loved it. But I know that even when I talk with some people from my hometown and talk with them early about, hey, have you thought about, and then fill in the blank. And so many people say, no, I've never really thought about that. I haven't ever seen someone that looks like me or that maybe thinks like me or that comes from someplace where I come from or whatever. I don't know. I know that it was always important to me growing up in the same way that it was to you. And I would be so privileged if you all would allow me to come down and visit you and visit some places in South Texas. We've got some graduates down there. I could pop in and visit them also, in addition to the famous Judge Ochoa. You can reach me fairly quickly if you just kind of Google OU Law, and my email is right on there. So I'm happy to correspond, answer questions. We've got an amazing admissions team and admissions director. So they're incredible, including an OU Law grad from your neck of the
I
woods.
forgot to mention
So,
that the associate director of admissions is from Brownsville, Texas.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah, we're excited she's back. I think she's a fourth generation
lawyer.
OU law grad too. So,
So, do you have any closing remarks for students that are maybe watching this here in the Rio Grande Valley?
well, I this is something that I share with my sons a lot. And so again, I'm sorry if I sound too momish, but um, there's this story that I've heard and that has stuck with me for a really long time, and it's basically there's a very successful CEO who's being interviewed, and she gets this big award, and she's asked, "Can you share the secret of your success?" And she said, "Yes, I can. I'm successful because of all the good decisions that I've made." And that's kind of not very helpful. But the interviewer followed up and said, "Well, then to what do you attribute all of the good decisions you've made?" And she said, "All the bad ones." And I love that because I think it really highlights how we learn from choices that we make, how we might put ourselves out there and something might not come to pass in the way that we hoped, but we learn something from it nevertheless, and that we should never, never stop trying. I sound so like so much of a cliche, but just keep getting up there and trying again. That's what I tell my kids, because I think that so-called failure is not really a thing. I think it's just another way to learn. And sometimes it's the best way to learn. So don't count yourself ever out. Just keep going after it when you identify what you might like to do and figure out a strategy. And you might make some quote bad decisions along the way, but you're always going to learn something in the process.